Some weeks on the horror calendar feel like they were engineered in a lab. Dark corridors, bad weather, abandoned roads, and one terrible decision after another. This one begins in deep space, where a distress signal should have been ignored, and ends in a basement where a lonely woman keeps smiling long after everyone should have run. Tonight we have the movie that made space feel wet, industrial, and hungry. A Netflix season that dragged 1980s nostalgia into full-blown supernatural war. A Sam Raimi curse machine with teeth. And a backwoods wrong turn that helped define early 2000s survival horror. Then, after the break, our deep-cut spotlight opens the door for a Blumhouse thriller, where the party house becomes the trap. So check the vents, don't touch the cursed envelope, and if a stranger offers you a shortcut through the woods, take the long way. Welcome back to This Week in Horror History, your weekly time machine through the creepiest anniversaries in film, TV, books, games, and beyond. I'm your host, Enrique Couto, and tonight we're talking about May 25th through 31st. Coming up, Ridley Scott turns the haunted house into a spaceship. Hawkins, Indiana goes bigger, darker, and meaner. Sam Raimi drags one unlucky loan officer straight toward damnation, and a stretch of West Virginia road becomes a cannibal nightmare. Then, right after the break, our deep-cut spotlight leads to Ma's house, where the drinks are cold, the rules are simple, and the host is absolutely not okay. May 25th, 1979, Alien opens in the US, and science fiction horror changes forever. Ridley Scott takes the bones of a haunted house movie and bolts them to the Nostromo. Dark hallways, locked rooms, bad air, and a monster that feels less like an animal and more like a biological weapon with bad intentions. The genius of the film is how grimy it all feels. Space isn't shiny here. Space is work. Space is industrial, corporate. It's a place where someone can decide your life is worth less than a specimen. On a budget of around $11 million, Alien became a major hit and turned in space. No one can hear you scream into one of horror's great promises. It also gave us Ripley, the chest burster, the face hugger, and a creature design that still looks like something your nightmare mind should not be able to invent. I mean, it's a classic. There's very little you can say about Alien that hasn't been said before. So if you want to revisit it or, shockingly, see it for the first time, I do recommend that very much, and it's currently streaming with your subscription on HBO Max, and you can rent or buy it on Amazon Video, Apple TV, and Fandango at home. May 27th, 2022, Stranger Things 4, Volume 1, lands on Netflix, and Hawkins goes from spooky adventure to full horror opera. This is the season that gives us Vecna, haunted memories, visions that are cursed, floating bodies, and that metal as exorcism image of a song pulling someone back from the edge. The show had always shown love for horror, but Season 4 leans hard into nightmares, trauma, and supernatural body horror, too. It also became a streaming event with 7 episodes dropping at once, with massive runtimes and a pop culture aftershock big enough to shove Kate Bush back into the mainstream. Horror history is not only theatrical anymore. Sometimes it arrives in your queue and it eats up a whole weekend. This was one of the most fun drops that I think Stranger Things had. It was one of the more fun seasons as the show was getting so epic and massive. I definitely have a big soft spot for this one. I mean, it gave us Eddie Munson, and that's worth celebrating. And I think whether you believe Stranger Things was great from beginning to end or the ending left some things to be desired, most of us can agree that the first few seasons of Stranger Things were truly special, and I think Part 4 had a lot to love. And of course, it's available to watch right now on, shockingly, Netflix. May 29th, 2009, Drag Me to Hell opens, and Sam Raimi reminds everyone that PG-13 horror can still be disgusting, funny, mean, and gloriously unhinged. Alison Lohman plays Christine Brown, a loan officer who makes one cruel professional choice and gets cursed for it. From there, Raimi turns moral panic into carnival horror, projectile gross-outs, nightmare shadows, violent slapstick, and a demon goat that somehow makes perfect sense in the moment. It cost about $30 million and grossed around 90.8 worldwide, so not a superhero movie number, but a strong reminder that Raimi's horror instincts are still relevant. It's a fun and nasty little movie that I do recommend you see if you somehow missed it. I wasn't a huge fan of it the first time I watched it, but it grew on me like the disgusting fungus that it is. And it's free to watch with ads on YouTube, and not some secret sneaky link. It's legitimate. And of course, it's available to buy or rent on Prime Video, Apple TV, and Fandango at home. May 30th, 2003, Wrong Turn opens, and the backwoods survival nightmare gets a very 2000s coat of grime. The setup is truly a beautiful piece of simplicity. A car accident, followed by a bad detour, a group of young people stranded in the woods, and something waiting deeper in the trees. It is not subtle, but it does exactly what it promises. It takes the fear of being lost, watched, hunted, and outmatched, then strips away cell service, help, and good choices. The film made about $28.7 million worldwide on a reported budget of $12.6 million. That may not sound like a lot, but in 2003, home video and cable were massive sources of income, especially for a film like this, which was never considered a prestige vehicle, but it became durable with sequels, reboots, cable replays, and a whole generation of viewers who learned to distrust shortcuts, to say the least. Wrong Turn was a film that came about at the exact right moment, a moment when horror films were still finding a footing, and it was mostly remakes and reimaginings at the time, but Wrong Turn came about and said, you know what, we're gonna do our own franchise, and we're gonna do it the old-fashioned way, with hillbilly cannibals and gross-outs. So I can't say I don't appreciate that. It still holds up to this day, and the sequels are, while they vary a lot, there are a lot of things to love in them. Some of them are silly, some of them are even meaner, and some of them barely make a lick of sense, but what I'll tell you they all do very well is entertain. So if you want to take a West Virginia road trip with a very, very special detour, it's available to watch free with your Prime subscription or on the Howdy app with your subscription, and of course you can rent it on Prime Video, Fandango at Home, and Apple TV. Who's hungry? Tomorrow on Weekly Spooky, two teenage boys sneak into the winter woods after dark. chasing a little privacy, a little danger, and a tunnel they were never supposed to enter. At first, it's just an abandoned railroad line, a place to hide, a place to smoke, a place where no one will bother them. But deep inside that concrete tunnel, past the dark, past the rusted rail cars, something is moving. Something that watches from the shadows, something that lives where the trucks end, something that's been feeding in the dark for a long, long time. And when the flashlight hits the floor, when the footsteps start overhead, when the tunnel behind them becomes the only way out, one boy is going to learn that some monsters don't chase you because they're hungry. They chase you because you came home. Tomorrow, step into the dark with The Thing That Lurks in the Tunnel by Bruce Haney on Weekly Spooky. Just remember, if you hear something moving inside the tunnel, don't look back. All right, spookies, quick breather. When we come back, we're going to a party house that feels safe right up until it doesn't. A basement, a friendly adult, a few simple rules, and Octavia Spencer proving that the scariest smile in the room might belong to the person offering you a drink. Welcome back. Let's go downstairs, but under no circumstances should you go upstairs. May 31st, 2019. Ma opens and Blumhouse turns a basement hangout into a trap with a big ol' smile on its face. On paper, the setup sounds almost like a dark teen thriller. A lonely woman named Sue Ann buys booze for a group of teenagers, lets them party in her basement, and becomes the strange adult in their lives who seems a little too eager to be included. But the reason Ma belongs in horror history goes to Octavia Spencer. She plays Sue Ann with warmth and awkwardness, neediness and rage. She brings a kind of social terror that makes every friendly gesture feel unstable. The movie knows the house is the monster. The basement is the welcome mat. Upstairs is the forbidden zone. Every time the teens return, the rules feel less like boundaries and more like bait. Plus, we got this absolute gem of a moment that no one will ever forget.
Don't make me drink alone. Don't make me drink alone. Don't make me drink alone.
This is one that if you haven't seen it, you really do need to. It's a solid example of a more modern post-internet horror film that doesn't really feel cringy or like it was written by people out of touch, except when it's featuring the character that's meant to be cringy and out of touch. And Octavia Spencer, being such a renowned and incredibly talented actress, ties it all together so well. Financially, this was Blumhouse doing what Blumhouse does best, a lean $5 million production that grossed about $61.2 million worldwide. Critically, people argued about whether the movie used Spencer well enough, but critically, people argue all the time, and let them. We can be over here enjoying our popcorn and our lives while they debate or whatever it is they do, sit in a closet and smell their own flatus. That means farts. But as a horror object, Ma has a weird afterlife because the central image is it's so hard to shake. It's a nice lady who has a locked door, who throws a party that curdles into captivity. There has been a promise of a Ma sequel, and why on earth wouldn't there be? But so far, nothing has surfaced other than a whole lot of talk. But hopefully that'll change really soon. So if you want to go to Ma's house for a fun evening, whether it's a return visit, although, or your first time, it's available to rent or buy on Amazon Video, Apple TV, and Fandango at home. All right, get out the party hats. It's time to celebrate some horror-related birthdays, and we're starting off with a true legend. Born May 26, 1913, Peter Cushing. Hammer horror royalty, although he feels damn near like royalty just in general, forever tied to the character of Van Helsing, Dracula's #1 enemy, Frankenstein, the doctor, not the monster, and that unmistakable mix of elegance and menace. A very happy birthday to Peter Cushing. Born on May 26, 1966, Helena Bonham Carter. Gothic, strange, funny, tragic, and right at home in everything from Mary Shelley's Frankenstein to Sweeney Todd. A very happy birthday to Helena Bonham Carter. Born on May 27, 1911, another heavy hitter in the world of horror and cinema as a whole, Vincent Price, the voice, the eyebrow, the velvet menace, one of horror's great ambassadors of theatrical wickedness, a man who brought many people into horror and keeps bringing them in over the decades. Happy birthday, Vincent Price. And wow, talk about going for 3 for 3. Born on May 27, 1922, Christopher Lee. Famous for Dracula, Lord Summerisle in The Wicker Man, Saruman in Lord of the Rings, and one of the most commanding presences genre cinema has ever had. Happy birthday, Christopher Lee, and I cannot believe 3 of the biggest names in classic horror were all born in the same week. That's why we do this show, because sometimes time is more complex and interesting than we realize. This week shows horror moving through different kinds of traps. In 1979, the trap is a spaceship run by people who value cargo over crew. In 2003, it's the wrong road. In 2009, it's a curse you can't lawyer your way out of. In 2019, it's a basement party with rules that keep changing. And in 2022, it's memory itself. The past reaching up, grabbing hold and refusing to let go. I don't do this very often, but our weekly recommendation this time around is Alien, released on May 25th, 1979. This is one of those calendar anchors that deserves the extra push. It's not just a great sci-fi horror movie. It's a perfect lesson in patience. The movie lets the ship breathe. It lets the crew feel tired, ordinary, and real. Then it introduces one impossible organism and allows every hallway, vent, meal, and monitor to become a threat. So watch it for the creature, absolutely, but also watch it for the silence, for the production design, the corporate coldness, and the way Sigourney Weaver's Ripley slowly becomes the person most capable of surviving the nightmare. As we mentioned before, it's available to watch with your HBO Max subscription and to rent or buy digitally on Prime Video, Apple TV, and Fandango at home. Well, my spookies, That's your trip through May 25th to 31st in horror history. June is coming right up, so make sure you're subscribed. And speaking of, tomorrow, Wednesday, we have our brand new horror story waiting just for you at Weekly Spooky, so don't miss it. On Thursday Thrills, we'll take a deep dive into everything bizarre about the back rooms, whether it's the feature film, the creepypasta, or the markets left on horror on the internet. And then Friday, on Cutting Deep into Horror, Rachel and I will be talking about Paranormal Activity, a film that whether you love it or hate it, you have to admit it had some good scares and started a revolution in cinema when it comes to found footage. So make sure you're subscribed on your favorite podcast app. There's always something spooky right here for you to enjoy. And of course, we'll be back here next Tuesday with even more horror history. So until then, remember, our days are numbered, because that's how we tell them apart. See you next week.